Hello and welcome. Welcome to Input English. In the car, Robert said, this is kind of weird. He was talking to Kathy. He said, this is kind of weird. We're going to the doctor's office, but this is going to be kind of fun, isn't it? She said, I think it might be. We're going to learn a lot for sure. They had filled out their questionnaires, which had been more extensive than they expected. They took some time and answered honestly. The last page of the questionnaire dealt with some other lifestyle questions like exercise, the use of alcohol, tobacco, or drugs, also stress and sleep habits. So it was a very thorough questionnaire. When they arrived at Dr. Ferguson's office, the questionnaires were accepted by the staff and they were put in an exam room. Within a few minutes, Dr. Ferguson arrived in the room and greeted them. When he sat down, he explained that he had reviewed both questionnaires in detail and found that they both had areas where improvement could be simple and relatively easy. He was happy to see that there were really no issues with drugs, alcohol, or tobacco, so that was good. Neither of them seems to have a current problem with stress or sleep loss, and they're both very socially connected with a lot of friends. So with those four pillars out of the way, his plan was to focus on exercise and eating behavior. He said, let's get the exercise out of the way because it's so simple. Any exercise you do that is not harmful is good. I would recommend 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week of moderate exercise. A great way to do that is just walking at a fairly brisk pace. If you're getting moderate exercise, you can talk to someone while you're exercising, but you would not be able to sing to them. So if you take a relatively brisk walk once a day, maybe twice a day if you want to do shorter walks, and get a half an hour per day, that would satisfy your needs for exercise. Now, there are things you could do in addition to that. For instance, you could do more moderate aerobic exercise. If you do more exercise, you're going to get more benefit. But we do like to start with that benchmark of 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Everybody agrees on that. You could add resistance exercise if you like, either with free weights, a machine, or just elastic exercise bands. For now, let's just focus on the first metric, which is 30 minutes a day, moderate exercise. Now you can break it up into smaller pieces. You don't have to do it all at once, 30 minutes. The most important thing is to make a habit and do it very consistently. He asked, do you have any questions about that? They indicated no. He said, that brings us to eating behavior, and there's a lot going on here. Really, I don't choose to pick apart your eating behavior and throw a bunch of criticism at you. No, you're doing a lot of things right. But with eating behavior in this country, in the 21st century, we're kind of swimming upstream. We're going against the current because the food available in the grocery store is increasingly processed food with a lot of salt added, a lot of convenience added, and it takes a lot of work to escape that trap. For most people on a Western diet, typical of what we eat here in the United States, we don't get enough fiber, we get way too much fat, way too much salt, more protein than we need, and we really don't get nearly enough antioxidants. So rather than have me dictate to you how you need to eat, I'd like to recommend some resources so that you can make your own choices And the goal of those choices should be a lot more fiber, a lot more antioxidants, and a lot less salt and fat. Now, there were some things on the questionnaire that stuck out, and they are straightforward to deal with. Robert, I see that you eat with the family at breakfast and dinner, but your lunch is a lot of sandwiches with cold cuts, burgers, fries, and sodas. So that right there is going to heavily contribute to the problems that we're trying to deal with. So I would recommend that you bring your lunch and get rid of all that convenient fast food at the lunchtime. That right there may be enough to solve your problem. You'll definitely lose weight, and your blood pressure will probably come down, as will your lipids. So that's a change I would make immediately. Bring your lunch. Kathy, I see that you drink sodas, but they're diet sodas. So diet sodas are a trap. They sound great because they have no calories. The trouble is the chemicals in them are not good for people. So the studies I've reviewed on this basically say that the more diet sodas you drink, the heavier you're going to be and the more health problems you're going to have. I would rename diet sodas in your mind for yourself. Instead of thinking diet soda, think toxic chemicals. And if you rename diet sodas with their new name, which is fairly accurate, toxic chemicals, then it's easier to avoid them. It's pretty simple. Now, things that are good to drink: water, tea, sparkling water. For sure, we want to avoid sugary carbonated beverages. He asked Kathy, does that make sense? She says it sure does. And then to both of them, he said, this should not be drudgery. This should not be miserable. This should be fun. You should look at food as a big part of your life, and you should enjoy it, and you should eat good food that not only nourishes you, but makes you happy. So we've got some resources for you to do that. Now, Kathy, I see that you do most of the grocery shopping and fix most of the meals, breakfast and dinner, right? She indicated yes. Dr. Ferguson said, well, then it's going to fall to you to take a leadership role in these food selections, because what you put on the table really matters. Now, you're doing a good job. We're just going to kick it up a notch. We're just going to make it better with knowledge. And it's not that I'm going to dictate what you eat. You're just going to make really good choices. So there's a book on my handout that you already have called How Not to Diet. And it was written by Michael Greger, MD. That book will be very helpful for you to understand what we're dealing with. At this point, Kathy interrupted him and said, I saw that book, I downloaded it, and I've read the first 2 chapters of it. Well, that gave Dr. Ferguson a big smile because he's seeing some buy-in here. She seems to be pretty enthusiastic about that. He said, well, I would finish that book. It will be helpful. And then there's another book also on my handout that you might have not noticed, called The Microbiome Solution by Robynne Chutkan. Dr. Chutkan reviews how the germs, the microbes in our gastrointestinal tract contribute to our health or to our illnesses. I recommend that book by Dr. Chutkan. It's a nice review of the subject. She said, I will look at it. While he was on the subject of the microbes in the gut, he went on to explain to them that the mindset that he was taught as a child was that the only good germ is a dead germ. And now, with the available scientific evidence, it's clear that we need these germs, these microbes in our gut, and they make us healthy. He explained that there is some research that show if you want children to grow up healthy and not have allergies and chronic illness, then they need good biodiversity of the microbes in their gut. He then said something surprising. He explained that one strategy to make sure that growing children have good gut biodiversity is to get them a dog. He smiled broadly and said, you know, a friend of mine is a gastroenterologist and he knows about this, and he didn't get his kids a dog, he got them 2 dogs. And when I was talking to him about it, he explained that he felt that getting good microbes delivered to his children by the dog was too important to give to just 1 dog. So he has 2 dogs for his kids. And then as an aside, he explained that he is aware of no articles or research that shows that 2 dogs are really better than 1. He said, as you look at those books, one of the things you might keep in mind is our farmers market. If you want to get access to farm fresh organic produce for your kitchen, there's nothing better than a farmer's market, and we have one right here. He said, to conclude, I would recommend that we have you talk to our dietitian at the hospital. She is certified in lifestyle medicine, so she knows all about this stuff we're talking about here, and she will be very helpful to you. He said, oh, Robert, I forgot something. It was in the questionnaire. The question was whether you added salt to your food, and you said you did, but then the follow-up question was, do you salt your food before you taste it? And you said you did. So for someone with high blood pressure who doesn't want high blood pressure, the first thing I would do is stop adding salt to food, and certainly don't put salt on food before you taste it, because that's just adding salt by habit, and that's just not good for you. He said, you know, humans are very adaptive, and if you cut out the salt that you're adding to your food, for the first week, it's going to taste strange and you're going to think, oh man, this needs salt. But after a very short period of time, it's going to become normal and you will not miss it. You will not miss it. There are also some salt substitutes. I would recommend the potassium chloride salt substitute. I have it in my cabinet in the kitchen, and I use it instead of table salt. Potassium chloride used as a salt substitute is safe, it's good for you, and you'll get used to the flavor. It will just become normal. He concluded by inviting them to send him an email if they have any questions, or call the office so that the staff can set up a telephone appointment. They can do a Zoom type telephone appointment and answer any questions and discuss things. He was happy to do that for them, and he recommended a follow-up in 3 months, at which point they'll repeat the labs for Robert. He then turned to Kathy and said, we don't have baseline labs for you, so I have ordered them with the lab, and if you'd like to drop by the lab next door, you can get your baseline labs so you can know your starting point and see where you're going. Any questions? No questions. Now we're going to check in with Kathy and Robert after they've had a chance to make all these changes. They have decided to take responsibility for their health, and they're going to start forming some habits. These fictional stories, as well as the true stories that I have on these videos, are offered as comprehensible input to help you improve your listening comprehension and eventually your speaking ability. These two are connected. In addition, I have dozens of videos on strategies for how to use comprehensible input and ensure that your journey to improve your English is enjoyable, efficient, and effective. With more than 170 videos posted to YouTube, there are lots of resources for you to use for comprehensible input. If you need more information on how to use comprehensible input, I recommend that you review those videos on this channel. If you are already comfortable with how comprehensible input works, then perhaps you would focus your effort mostly on the stories so that you get a lot of content, a lot of hours in contact with the language, and this is by far the best way to improve your comprehension and your speaking ability. I hope you join us in the next video. See you soon.